Welcome back. You're joining us at Dukascopy TV HQ. Now, amongst all the banker bashing that we hear of in the world's media, I'm joined now by an organisation which looks to protect the rights of investors. CIFA's Jean-Pierre Diserens joins me now. Jean-Pierre, thank you so much for coming in today.
Well, thank you to Dukascopy to invite me regularly. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Now, CIFA is currently preparing for its next intervention taking place in the first week of December with the Forum of Small States, or FOSS if you prefer. For you, what items are on the agenda and what do you see as the key risks to investors' rights at present?
Well, with FOSS we will discuss mostly the post-MDG solutions we have to work on. As you know, the Millennium Goals, FOSS is part of the United Nations and we're part of the Economic and Social Council as an NGO, and we will go and present ideas that will enter into the program for the post-Millennium Development Goals that should start in 2015.
Now, something that I did want to discuss today, which I know is of importance to you, is the IMF's recommendation for a temporary wealth tax. It's been commented that the moral argument for this one-time 10% wealth levy is compelling. However, I know that you guys over at CIFA believe that it's really quite a large infringement to investors' rights. Can you expand on this argument for us?
Yes, well, if we look at this IMF decision, that is rather surprising, but we consider it the continuation of what has happened in Europe before, and more precisely in Cyprus. Cyprus was a test case, and now the IMF is going into the same direction. Now, first of all, I would be very specific in saying using the term tax here is inappropriate. It is not a tax, it is an expropriation. And we all know that expropriations are forbidden according to the Charter of Human Rights. And if you want to call that a single exceptional, unique tax, that is exactly saying, well, it is an expropriation. We also know that if we talk now about 10%, it is going to be recurring until the government debt are covered. But how much money do we need to cover the government debt? Because if you look at the figures, which are very confusing, you realize that 10% will go nowhere. So it is a beginning of expropriation with a low expropriation rate to increase it in the subsequent years to reach a goal without having the governments taking the necessary steps that they have to take to become sustainable again. Because sustainability, especially for the developed countries right now, is a very important factor if we want to look in a brighter future for the economy of this world.
Now, you mentioned the phrase surprising there, and it really is coming from the IMF, who are usually a very conservative organisation. What does this say to you about the mentality of policymakers at present? Is this forming part of a greater policy trend? And particularly when we take into consideration that you've got former IMF economist Kenneth Rogoff, who's indicated that this controversial policy is likely to fail.
Yes, of course it is to fail, because 10% will not solve the problem. The problem will be solved by structural changes of our developed economies, not to run themselves into the trouble they are right now. What is confusing in all this, and I think decisions like the IMF or suggestions like that one from the IMF is definitely confusing the investor, because investors do not have the idea of investing in non-profitable situations. If the governments do not reform their way of thinking and their structures, we will be with 10% expropriation every year. Now that will last 10 years and then nothing's going to be left.
Okay, so if CIFA does not believe that an item such as this can assist EU countries in returning to pre-crisis debt to GDP ratios, what instead are you proposing?
Well, what we are proposing is basically we have to clean up the mess that has been created. What we observe is that those who make suggestions for cleaning up the mess are those who created it. This does not give any credibility to any suggestions made by the international institutions right now. Now, if we would look at it differently, in saying, okay, we clean up the mess the governments are in, for that the ticket price will be X, and by January 1st, 2000, who knows what, the liberal economy, the freedom to invest, the guarantee to investors that they will be able to conduct freely their business and not under heavy regulatory burdens who kills them to begin with. If we would have such an approach, I think we could look for a brighter future. But as long as the governments who have failed over the last 25 years do not take into account the serious structural changes they have to undergo, the investors will be very reluctant to believe whatever comes out of these governments.
Jean-Pierre, thank you so much for providing your insight into what is a very controversial topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, viewers, that's all we've got time for right now, but I'll be back shortly with plenty more exclusive interviews for you, so don't go away. Goodbye for now.